Good evening. Welcome to the council chambers, City of Marshfield, Tuesday, September 10th for the council meeting. Call to order, roll call. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item C, public hearing, 2024 special assessment, 2024 asphalt paving project, alley between Central Avenue and Maple Avenue from 12th Street to 14th Street. Public hearing is now open. Any comments, questions, discussions? Any comments, questions, discussions? Any comments, questions, or discussions? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Item D, identify possible conflicts of interest. Seeing none, move on to item E, public comment period correspondence. At this time, I'll recognize those members of the public who have indicated a desire to address the council. Upon recognition by me, persons may address the council, first stating their name and address. The council may act on emergency matters introduced by members of the public. Matt McLean.
Thank you, Lois. Again, Matt McLean, 609 North Hume. I'm here speaking on behalf of Visit Marshfield. Just wanted to give you a little update, and I'm happy to announce the Maple Fall Fest is this weekend. Got my new shirt here, so if you want a shirt, we've got some. I really am excited. I hope you've seen the media for it. We have about 10 billboards within about 100 miles. We're on multiple radio stations. Our social media followers of 28,000 are getting hit with messages, as well as about 13,000 on our email marketing. So we're expecting a big weekend. Got our fingers crossed for the weather. Looking pretty good so far. And so I really just want to use this to invite everyone in this room and everyone watching to please come to Wildwood Park this weekend and have a great time and see what fun we can have in Marshfield. I also want to use this time to thank the sponsors for the event. Well, we couldn't do it without sponsors, volunteers. I have to, Lois is volunteering again this year. Thank you, Lois. Ashley and Nikki from the city are volunteering. I also want to make sure to thank, we've got help from the fire department, police department, ordinance, auxiliary, Parks and Rec, GIS. So a ton of people have helped out with us planning and getting this ready. So I appreciate all the help. I did want to mention, I hope everybody got to see the new banners on Veterans Parkway. We're good to get those up. The old ones are getting a little faded, so hope they'll help you enjoy those. And then I also did want to, I spoke with Dale after the fair, and it went really well. So I think we got a lot of visitor comments, especially on some of the music acts. And so I think it was a great fair year. So I wanted to congratulate him on that. And then one other note, I just wanted to know, we've been meeting, Visit Marshfield has been talking with Justin Casperson and the pickleball group. We're going to be meeting with them in a few weeks and talk about tournaments and how we can help that project. So that's just a brief update. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And all sticky maple for the weekend. Because that's what Maple's all about. Item E is any other public comments? Any other public comments? One more time, public comments. Seeing none. Item F, approval of minutes, August 27th, 2024, regular meeting, and August 29th, 2024, special meeting. We have a motion by Alderman Tompkins, second by Alderman Fire. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you. Mayor's comments. I have three things this evening. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, goodness sakes. Staff updates, sorry. Justin Casperson, Parks Recreation Director, update on Wood County grants.
I can see why you skipped over that. We rarely have staff comments. So good evening and thank you. Last meeting, we had a motion to go ahead and try to see if we can have those funds, the $12,500 allocated towards Wenzel to be either reallocated to next year or reallocated to another project. The committee agreed to reallocate them to the pickleball project for this year. So we're able to keep that $12,500. And we were also awarded $20,000 for the softball fields for next year. So in total, we got quite a few dollars from Wood County. So I just wanted to pass that along. No,
Not yet. Having a little fun, okay? It's all great. Yeah, see what happened when I skipped over something? Oh, my goodness. Anyway, mayor's comments. I have 3 comments this evening. We will not be doing item R. That will be for further review per the attorneys. The second thing, I would like to take a moment of silence for 9/11, which is tomorrow. And thirdly, I've received an email from Ed Wagner, and I'm going to read exactly what his email was, because that's what he asked me to do, not embellish or anything, which is really hard for me, but this is what Ed asked. Dear Mayor, it is with great regret that I submit a resignation from the Common Council effective at 12:01 a.m., 9/11/2024. I will turn in my city-owned laptop and key to the 5th District within the next 3 days. It is a pleasure to serve on the Common Council, but medical issues have now interfered with my ability to carry on at the pace required to meet and conquer the complex problems that the city now faces. Best wishes and luck to all colleagues on the council. Sincerely, Ed Wagner, Alder, District 5. Thank you, Ed. Item I, council comments. Seeing none.
I actually will do something this time, if that's okay.
Certainly.
Yeah, I know we never jump in on these council comments, but I've been trying to vocalize a little bit more for some of our boards and commissions, and then also just pass along thoughts. So number one, I was recently on vacation and I missed a council meeting, so I want to say thank you to the council for your patience and understanding. We were on a family vacation touring the Capitol, and I appreciate everyone on the council stepping up and looking out for the best of our city. Number two, I want to say thanks to Ed. Very sad to hear that, but I've learned a lot from Ed in the little bit of time that I've been on this council, and I have found him to be nothing but a pleasure to be able to sit on the council with and serve with. So I'd like to wish Ed all the best and say thanks. And then the last thing was, just because I missed the last one, I didn't get to congratulate the fair on another great fair season this year. So congrats to everyone, and I hope everyone in town enjoyed it. So thanks all.
Thank you, Derek. Alderman Tompkins?
I will give Natasha a special permission to use my microphone.
Uh-oh.
None of our mics are working here.
Hello? Oh.
There you go.
First, I just want to say I was clapping for the years of service that Ed has given to Wisconsin. As mayor of Ashland and then here in Marshfield, he has decades and decades been a public servant, and it was a job well done. I just want to give a little update on utilities. We are starting to talk about economic development in the Utility Commission, and just to throw out a paradigm that they're using for economic development might be helpful for us to at least be a little versed in. When they think of economic development, they think of it as a stool with 3 legs, and if one leg is too much over another, the stool won't be balanced, so it's 3 parts that need to be balanced. One is people, so that would be making sure that people are well trained, that people actually come, we have a workforce. There's a whole list under people. Then the second is place, and that is that this is a desirable city that people want to live in. That includes good school systems, parks, amenities for families, safe community, all that. And then the third is business and supporting business, helping them get off the ground, giving them the resources they need while they're here. So the 3-legged stool, I just wanted to kind of introduce that to you because over the course of the next few months, that discussion is starting to happen in the utilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council comments? Seeing none, item J, City Administrator's update.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to apologize for the awkward moment I created a moment ago. I was giving a hand signal to Sarah about something else. In terms of the order of presentation, Sarah, it's going to be what's on the agenda. We were going to flip, but now we're not flipping. I know, I'm getting there. I'm getting there, very slowly and painfully. I'd like to cede a minute of my time from City Administrator's update to Sarah, because she has a staff update, and that's what you were trying to get my attention for. So go right ahead.
Sarah Dressel, staff update.
We plan these things for hours. During the
Absolutely,
day,
yes.
so.
Make it a little later.
And I apologize because I didn't give you forewarning that I was going to provide an update, because we usually don't. So wanted to give an update to the Community Development Director position. Mr. Stauber had asked just for a quick update. So just as a kind of little bit of refresher, the Community Development Director position, we had opened up earlier in the summer. On July 8th is when we had on-site interviews. We did extend an offer to a candidate, but by July 18th, the offer was not accepted due to personal reasons. So thereafter, we met with GovHR, who had been handling the main recruitment for that position, just to discuss kind of what next steps would be and things like that. So they did suggest waiting to repost the position just to give some space in between postings. It tends to lead to a better recruitment process. So we are set to go live with a new recruitment process in the beginning of October. What this will do is hopefully allow us to have some space in between our last posting, as well as hopefully more candidates this time of year typically start to apply for positions. Kids are in school, things are kind of getting a little more normalized after a busy summer. So we tend to see higher numbers for any of our job postings. The good part is this does remain part of our original contract with GovHR. So the only additional costs that there will be for this recruitment will be if we have candidates that are going to be coming here and for interviews and just the expenses that are with that, as well as any additional marketing that might need to take place if there's any costs to it. A lot of the stuff that we do, there aren't costs to, but. And just to give a little update, I looked today because I kind of wanted to see what areas in the community currently have either the exact same position or a similar position open. So just for a little bit of food for thought, right now there's a community development director or, like I said, very similar position open in Stevens Point, Wausau, Plymouth, Arcadia, Two Rivers, Stillwater. So there's a lot. And looking at wages, very similar. Benefits, very similar. So we're going to work hard to hopefully get an excellent candidate in here. But just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of an update. So thank you.
I have a question.
Alderman Stauber?
Did I not ask a question or?
Since I'm supposed to.
Sorry.
No.
Sorry.
And actually, I'm going to jump through this in a little kitty wampus, since everything is kind of weird tonight. When Gary and I were in Las Vegas the first week of August, we watched the council meeting. And guess what? The same exact thing happened there. So that's the way of the world. And also, one more really interesting thing. Their citizen comment, they get exactly 1 minute from the time they say their name. That's all they're allowed, is 1 minute. So that's an interesting, again, food for thought as things come around with the...
If I can continue with the
Yes,
city
sir.
administrator's update, just to note, I was gone on vacation last week, but I'm continuing to work on the items raised by council members for future agendas. Some of what you'll be seeing tonight, you'll be seeing Jackie Mish from Vandewaal giving an update on the 2nd Street redevelopment plan. And on the 24th of September, we'll be doing a presentation on code enforcement. That was a request from Mike O'Reilly. And then on the 8th of October, Dale Christensen will be here. It was Brian's request to give a summary report on the 2024 Central Wisconsin State Fair. So those aren't all the items, but those are just some of the things that'll be coming up in the weeks ahead. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Reports from commissions, boards, and committees. Seeing none. Consent agenda. Motion by Alderman Varsho, second by Alderman Giles. Alderman Weigel?
Yeah, can I pull 5A?
Finance Budget Personnel Committee? Approval revised policy number 4.320, utility transfers. Any others? Please vote for the consent agenda.
Mr. Werman,
Yes.
Mrs. Spiros,
yes,
Mr. Weigel,
Yes.
That motion passes. Alderman Weigel?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring this up again, just because for the life of me, I cannot make sense out of the purpose of this. As it stands right now, the proposed change is to have any utility dividends be deposited into the Economic Development Fund, the 205 fund, and then from there allow City Council to pull from the 205 fund. As it stands right now, prior to actually enacting this change, the dividends go straight to the general fund. Now, it might sound like I'm splitting hairs here, but my concern is the following, is that when we have money in the general fund, there are no restrictions how it's spent. As it says right there in the number 2 there, is that it can pay it into the general fund. Now, if it comes out of the 205 fund, we have requirements to justify it through economic development purposes. So, albeit it might be small, it does create another layer of obligation for us, another layer of duty. So maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but years in the future, if we do need to spend it on something that might not be perfectly for ED or economic development purposes, it then creates an issue to transfer it out of the 205 fund to the general fund to use that, whereas transferring it from the general fund straight to the 205 fund is pretty seamless and without any pain. So the reason I want to bring this up is because to me, it doesn't make sense to put another restriction on us as far as spending money. We're going to have to transfer between these two funds as it is on an annual basis. So I don't see why we're handicapping ourselves by requiring a economic development reasoning behind it to transfer to the general fund. So with that, I'll move to send it back to Finance, Budget, and Personnel for further reconsideration.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Stauber. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, we need to vote.
Mr. Werman, Mr. Werman? Is he frozen? Mrs. Spiros?
no,
Mr. Werman, are you back?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened there. Yes.
And Mr. Weigel?
Yes.
That motion passes. So item N, action on items removed from the consent agenda. The motion passes, so it will go back to the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee on their next meeting. Item N, presentation City of Marshall benefits renewal, introduced by Sarah Dressel, Human Resources Director, presented by Chris Verley, Senior Benefits Consultant, Brown & Brown. I hope I pronounced your name right, Chris.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so good evening. Before I introduce Chris to you, who's going to be presenting tonight, I wanted to just kind of share a quick overview of the reasoning for tonight's presentation. So over the course of the last 2 years since I've been working here for the City of Marshfield, there's been a lot of discussion around benefits, particularly health and wellness benefits, and basically the way things have changed over the course of the years. So I've been told that back in the day, municipality benefits drew a huge amount of interest from applicants and things like that. So with a lot of the changes within the healthcare systems, over the years, costs have risen, plan types have changed, benefit packages for municipalities now often mirror what the private sector can do. And so essentially, we need to start looking outside of the box for a variety of things to kind of change things up, make things more attractive while staying very cost effective as much as possible. So in working with our new benefits broker, which is Brown & Brown, we have been exploring many options across the board on ways to kind of get the best coverage for our employees at the least cost for the city, just to have an overall great package for our current and our prospective employees. So tonight, Chris from Brown & Brown will be presenting information to you on our benefits that we currently have and potential future options, which is self-funding. So thank you to Chris for presenting tonight, and I'll hand things over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, board. Hope you can hear me okay. If you can't, just raise your hand and I can speak up. My role at Brown & Brown is a senior benefits consultant, looking at strategies for our clients and for the city of Marshfield. And as we're looking going into this renewal season, we brought the idea of potentially self-funding the medical plan as a way to maybe control finances and the ability to be more creative around plan design versus fully insured concept. As we went through the process, we realized that financially, this may not be the year for self-funding, meaning 2025, but we still feel like there's a good amount of education that goes behind it to remove some of the questions you may have, some of the stigma behind self-funding versus fully insured. We just recently received the fully insured renewal, and it's very favorable from Security Health Plan. So that's why I think for this year, we're probably going to just be looking at this as more as an educational meeting tonight versus like a decision-making process. But there's a lot more to learn. I'm going to give you basically self-funding 101. And then as we get more time together, we can go through in greater detail some of the ability that self-funding provides. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully this works. If it doesn't, let me know. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. All right. So I believe this presentation, Steve has this as well, so you can share with you after the meeting if you wish to have this. But between self-funding and fully insured, those are the two main abilities that employers, whether it be public or private sector, have to fund your medical plan. Neither one is better than the other. I will say that right out of the gate. There are advantages and disadvantages with both of them. It really comes down to what is the best for the client at the end of the day. We have clients that have stayed fully insured for many years, all shapes and sizes, different industries. And we have had clients that have been self-funded again, all shapes and sizes and different industries as well. Some of the key things to point out with self-funding is there are some unique differences. When you're fully insured, you basically get into a contract with a carrier. In your case, you're with Security Health Plan. And Security Health Plan takes on all the liability, the management, the administration of the plan, and you're basically paying premiums to them to manage that. When you're self-funded, there's a few more moving features that go into it. You're looking to find basically someone to help administer the program for you. You're looking for financial protections through what we call stop loss, which I'll explain later on. But within self-funding, you have two different buckets. You have fixed costs, which you're paying fees, again, to someone to administer the plan. You're paying a fee to the stop loss carrier. And then you have a second cost, which is more variable, and that is your claim spend. When you're self-funded, you are basically paying the claims of the plan after the members have paid their deductibles, their co-pay, their co-insurance, whatever that may be. So there is that difference, and that can vary, and that's usually the biggest thing that a lot of employers, when they're looking between self-funded and fully insured, is that variable cost. The fixed cost is a very small percentage of the overall budget. That's not the trigger point that scares maybe some employers from going self-funded. It is that variable cost. We at Brown & Brown feel like we specialize and can really manage self-funded plans and ability to control that spend. We have underwriters on staff. We have actuaries that are able to predict pretty good as far as what that spend is going to be year over year. But there is a variable cost that goes behind that. There is risk involved, obviously, when you're going self-funded, because if you're the claim payer, you're actually paying the claims, and we all know that there are high-cost claims out there. You just have to look at the news and look what's going on in the pharmaceutical industry, what's going on in healthcare itself. There are large claims out there. What we do to help protect the city and any of our other clients is we call stop loss coverage. And this is really another insurance policy to protect you from those large claims. How it works is that we look to purchase a deductible amount, and that's what the city would pay up to that deductible amount, and any claims in excess of that amount on that individual are then covered by the stop loss insurance. So again, I'll talk really specifically about stop loss and administration, but this is kind of just really the general idea of self-funding that goes behind the components. Again, it's fixed cost and it's variable cost. As far as the advantages and disadvantages of fully insured, what you guys have today, the advantages are that you have a fixed premium. You know what you're going to pay per employee who's enrolled in the plan, whether it be single or family coverage, regardless of how the claims are running. So during that 12-month period, you know what your budget's going to be. It's also somewhat easy to switch carriers from year to year. You could be with a Blue Cross Blue Shield one year, you could be with Security Health Plan the next year, or United Healthcare. We would just go out to market and find who gives you the best rates with similar plan designs. So it's fairly easy to switch from year to year. And again, from a budgeting standpoint, it's pretty predictable. The thing that the disadvantages behind fully insured is that when you have that really good year, when you're running really well, you are paying that high premium. Now, when it comes time to renewal, you hope that the carriers are going to give you credit for how well you ran that year. Same thing as if you have a bad year, you're actually getting that advantage. And then when it comes time to renewal, you'll probably see a little bit higher increase than normal. The other thing that fully insured carriers or plans have that you don't have when you're self-funded is there are state mandates that you have to follow. There's also state taxes that are additional costs that are built into the premium. The other thing too, when you're fully insured, is that when you're with that carrier, you're buying everything from them. It could be their wellness program, their disease management program, their pharmaceutical program. Everything is bundled together. You don't have the ability to kind of piecemeal that out to look for best-in-class carriers in different areas. And the last thing is that you have pretty much less plan design flexibility. The fully insured carriers have to file their plans with the state of Wisconsin, and those are the plans that they can offer. Now, there's still a pretty good wide variety of benefits that you're able to do, but when you want to get creative in some of the ways of like potentially like limiting high costs of claims by maybe not covering experimental treatments, when you're fully insured, you can't do that. You as an employer are going to get that package. When you're self-funded, you have the ability to dictate what your plan covers. Okay? As far as advantages and disadvantages of self-funding, the advantage is that you have control of the health plan. You are basically the fiduciary of your plan. So you get to decide what your network's going to look like. You get to decide who administers your plan. You get to decide on cost-saving measures, potentially like you working with best-in-class carriers to help bring down your costs, maybe around specialty medications, transplants, physical therapy, imaging. It goes on and on and on. Again, from a plan design, you get to pick and choose as the employer and the fiduciary of what you're going to cover and not cover. There's typically better cash flow when you're having those good years. You're going to see, again, you're paying your fixed costs and your claims. If claims are low for a month, you've actually are ahead of the game for that time. There's also no taxes, premium taxes, and termination lag when you're self-funded. So that's one savings that you have as a self-funded employer. And like I said, when you're having that good year, you're seeing those results immediately. On the flip side of that, when you're having a bad year and your claims are running higher than expected, well, you're feeling it right away out the gate as well. So you could potentially go over your budget amounts. And for a public sector employer, that's probably the biggest concern. We have, out of our office, we have over 30 different school districts, multiple counties, other cities as well that are self-funded right now. So we feel like we build in, I guess, a more conservative approach around the funding mechanisms for any kind of public sector versus a private sector employer. Again, there could be that voluntary from month to month. And then the last thing that to be aware of is because you are the fiduciary, at the end of the day, you do have final say on what is covered and what is not covered. There's the ability for you as the fiduciary to outsource some of those decision-making to other vendors, say, for instance, claim appeals. You may not want to get into the business of having to look at claims and go through appeals. A lot of our clients don't want to do that. we find a different vendor that is the appeal vendor. They have the final say on those kind of claim questions. So as you can see, both have pros and cons. This is really just a summary of the previous two slides that we just covered. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but there's a couple things I want to point out on this slide. When it comes to compliance, which is the second from the bottom, the line from the bottom, when you're fully insured, the insurance carrier really is responsible for complying with any kind of federal or state rules. When you're self-funded, you really only have to comply with ERISA, which is federal. Now, there has been some recent rulings in various states and even in Wisconsin where the state will pass a mandate that self-funded plans have to follow. And again, that comes back to who your plan administrator is, who you are working with. They would be the ones to help us make sure that your plan stays compliant. We at Brown & Brown also have a compliance division that helps maintain that as well. One of the nice things when you're self-funded is that from a reporting standpoint, we can obtain data, all the data that's out there now. It is scrubbed from personal information. No one's name or birthday is going to appear on this data. We do keep that blinded. We don't want anyone to know what's going on, but we have the ability to look at where are the spend occurring within your plan. Is it inpatient care? Is it musculoskeletal? Is it diabetes? We can really get into the data. When you're fully insured, you're limited. The carriers do not provide as robust reporting. So from a decision-making standpoint, when you're having that bad year, you may be shooting a little bit blind as to, okay, what's going on and what do we need to do to change our plan design to maybe fix why we're running at a little bit higher than normal. When you're self-funded, we can really identify what those issues are and then adjust plan design, or maybe it's employee education, whatever it may be, to help, steer the plan back in the right direction to performing as we like. So again, really, uniqueness between fully insured and self-funded is pretty dynamic. But again, there is no right or wrong funding mechanism for any employer. It really comes, as I said, down to what they feel best. Now, there is an advantage from a financial standpoint being self-funded versus fully insured. And this slide pretty much lays this out for you. When you're either whether you're fully insured or you're self-funded, your claims are your claims. If you have the same network and the same plan design, the claims are going to be identical. The employee is going to pay the same amount. The city is going to pay the same amount, whether it be the carrier or self-funded. I always tell people or I tell our clients that you can't run away from your claims. If you're having a bad claim year when you're fully insured, yes, in the current year, you're not feeling it. When it comes time to your renewal, you're definitely going to see that when it comes in your renewal. When you're self-funded and having a bad claim year, you feel it right away. But then again, when it comes time to your renewal, it's really based off of how we project going forward. So claims are the same. Administrative costs are basically the same. And pooling or stop loss, which we'll talk about, the fully insured carriers have a pooling point. They have a cap on claims as well that they're going to pay up to. And after that, they have insurance behind the scene that's going to cover those catastrophic, large six-figure claims. Same thing for when you're self-funded, you have stop loss that covers that. And then here's the difference here between fully insured and self-funded. Because at this point, you're done. When you're fully insured, there's taxes, which we talked about. There's risk margin that's built in. The carriers have to make money. So from a loss ratio standpoint, they want to build in about a 10% margin, 10 to 15% for risk to help cover their costs, potential increases in healthcare that they see over the years. And then the last thing that's built in is a termination leg. This is a little bit of dollars in case you were to leave the carrier, you were to leave Security Health Plan. They want to build in the ability for them to cover any claims that come in after your plan ends. So right now, your plan will end on 12/31 of 2024. If we would not renew a Security Health Plan, they're on the hook for any claims that come in post 1/1 that were incurred before 12/31. So they have to build this leg into it. Typically, it's about 2 months. They figure where there's going to be claims rolling in the door that they got to pay for. When you're self-funded, that these things don't exist. And this can range from anywhere from 8 to 12%. So the advantage of going self-funded, typically when employers look at it, is it's financial. It's also a control thing we talked about. They may want to get more creative behind the benefits they're offering to their employees, but it definitely comes down to a financial advantage of being self-funded. And typically, over the long period of time, self-funded clients, our book of business, when we look at our self-funded block versus our fully insured block, the self-funded block typically outperforms the fully insured block, and their costs are typically generally lower over long term. Again, I want to just keep reiterating though, you could have that 1 year where when you're self-funded, it is bad, but over time, you're going to have more good years than bad years. And then lastly, the stop loss. This is probably the biggest key, one of the biggest keys to helping, control those high claim costs. So stop loss coverage is provided by a third party. You will actually, what we do for our clients is we go out to market. We find a stop loss carrier that is willing to take on the risk at the best premium. This is a fixed premium that you pay month by month. And there is a cap as to, or a deductible we call it, that is built into the stop loss premium. So let's just say, for instance, from a stop loss standpoint, we have a $100,000 deductible. That means that on any one individual covered by the city of Marshfield, the city is going to pay up to $100,000 on individual. After that, the stop loss coverage will kick in and cover the rest of their claims for the remainder of that plan year. Again, that amount, that $100,000, can be set anywhere we want, where there's a comfort level. We do have some tools and some actuarial tables that kind of help us narrow down where to be for basically a public sector group, your size, and the risk you want to take on. So we can help fine tune where that dollar amount is. So again, you're paying a fixed premium every month for this protection of coverage to cover against those claims that we see now that can range, from six figures, and we see claims that are in the millions of dollars right now. And again, every year this is renewed, and we market it every single year. So you may not have the same stop loss carrier year over year. This is more of a commodity. It really does change quite often. So again, the stop loss market is very critical for protecting the plan from those high costs. And again, if we wanted to set the limit at $50,000, you can cap your risk then. Know that the lower the deductible, the higher the premium is going to be from the stop loss carrier. Now, there's another type of coverage called aggregate coverage, and this is what I call the sleep at night insurance. With aggregate coverage, you're going to have a cap on what the total plan is going to spend in a year. At that point, the plan, we set that cap. The example here we have is $2 million. For you guys, it'd be much lower than that because of your size. But in this example here, there's aggregate coverage of $2 million. So once the plan has paid $2 million in that plan year, 100% of all claims, pharmacy and medical, are covered by the stop loss aggregate coverage. So the cap on your risk every single year with your stop loss coverage. And what we do is we do negotiate that aggregate amount based on what we think the claim cost is going to be for that plan year. So again, you've got two protections, two buckets. You have the individual bucket for high cost catastrophic claims, and then you have the total plan bucket for that protection. And that is really the end of the 101 of self-funding. There's a lot more that goes behind it, around creativity, ability to, control costs with direct contracts, carving out certain risks that's out there in the marketplace. But again, I just want to give a high-level overview, kind of get your feet wet. I'm not sure what the protocol is, if it's time for questions or if it's over, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Council, any questions for Chris this evening? Seeing none, thank you for that presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Moving on to item O, presentation report on implementation of phase 1 of West 2nd Street redevelopment plan, introduced by Steve Bark, City Administrator, presented by Jackie Mish, Vanderwall and Associates Incorporated.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, we've been pleased over the last year in fact, before that, going back into the earlier stages when the plan was first developed to begin with, working with Vanderwall and Associates. They've been a great consultant to work with, Scott Harrington and Jackie Mish. Jackie is taking a lead role in this implementation phase. We're completing phase 1 now, and Jackie has a report for us on what's been accomplished in phase 1 and what to look forward to as we consider phase 2. Jackie, take it away.
Fantastic. Thank you, Steve. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jackie Mish with Vanderwall and Associates, here to provide an update on the plan process. So as many of you may already know, we worked with the city to adopt a redevelopment plan for the West 2nd Street District in 2022. And the city has brought us back to help with implementation of that plan. So just as a reminder, the West 2nd Street District is the area west of Central Avenue, pretty much centered on West 2nd Street. And this is an area that the city's identified as a need of investment and a target for redevelopment activity. So I'd just like to provide an overview of our phase 1 activities. This comprises primarily January of this year right up to today. And then I'll, as Steve mentioned, provide a look ahead to what we hope to accomplish in the next month, in the coming months. So key elements of implementation for redevelopment plan involves careful project management. This is really critical to keep moving forward the many different initiatives and recommendations in the plan. Since things are ready to go at different times and some things will have more momentum behind them at other times, it's important to have strong project management to make sure everything keeps moving forward and we don't drop the ball. This redevelopment implementation is led by our project management team, or PMT, and that is comprised of Steve Bard, your city administrator, Josh Miller from Cedar Corp and planning consultant, Carol Carper with the Community Development Authority, and then myself and my colleague Scott Harrington with Vanderwall. We meet monthly. Vanderwall has been taking the lead on the project management side of things, so we've prepared a work plan for ourselves. We prepare agendas. We've been tracking action steps. I do want to say we do have a really strong and committed project management team. It's been a great experience working with them. Folks are really responsive on their action steps and make this project a priority, and it's really been great. So a lot of the comments in the next few slides, I'll present them as things we've done, and I want to make sure that the project management team gets credit for those things as well. Additionally, Vanderwall and the PMT has provided some input on how the CDA should engage with the West 2nd Street District, and specifically providing some input on how that fits in with the city's permit approval process. Also, we met with the city attorney to discuss various legal considerations that are related to redevelopment. In the last 6 months, one of the main things we've been really focused on is business and property owner outreach. As I mentioned, the plan was adopted in 2022, and then the city really focused on other things for a little while. And so it was important to us to reconnect with the folks who own property and businesses in the district. The purpose of the meetings were to kind of hear from folks, see what was new since we had met with them years back, share information about the plan if they weren't already familiar with it, and to understand their future plans for their property. Do they plan to stay here for a long time? Are they looking to do something different with their property? All of this is really important for us to understand what potential lies in the district today and in the future. And we really just want to keep those lines of communication open so that the folks do have changes in their plans, they know who to talk to. So we mailed invitations and letters to all property owners in the district, and we're able to schedule a number of in-person meetings with property owners. So in March, we came up for 2 days here to Marshfield. We updated the CDA on our activities. We had in-person meetings with 9 property owners. We also had a great meeting with city staff to just learn what was new within the West 2nd Street District. And we re-engaged with the downtown stakeholders as well. After that site visit, we were able to follow up with 6 other property owners who weren't able to meet with us in person. So all said and done, we've spoken with almost every property owner in the district west of Central Avenue. And so we're feeling really good about our reach. Through our conversations with those property owners and the downtown stakeholders, we identified that it's going to be important to have more proactive communication with folks, including with the bid, with the business community and residents. People just want to know what's going on. And if no one's telling them what's going on, they come up with their own stories. And so we want to make sure that people have good information. We've also been advancing the other redevelopment sites that were identified in the redevelopment plan. That plan specifically identified what we're calling Site 1, or the Baltus building at 2nd and Chestnut. Since the city owns that property, that's an early priority for reuse and redevelopment planning. So we met with the police chief to discuss future needs for that site. We were carefully monitoring the police department and city garage conversation as well, because police department site and the city garage site, what the city's plans are for the future of those sites really does affect the future of the West Second Street District. So we're very interested in seeing where the path is leading us there. And then we also advise generally on the use of TIF and grant funding in terms of redevelopment. Another focus in phase one was reuse of the Weinbrenner building. So the plan calls for adaptive reuse of that building in the event that Weinbrenner Shoe Company leaves. And our goal from the start has always been to avoid seeing an empty or vacant building there. And so if we have enough time to plan for the future of that building, that would really be the most ideal situation. And so, ideally the day the company vacates, theoretically the city could just hand over the keys to the new user. And the reason that's important is that way the city doesn't have to worry about and negative impressions that may be left by having a vacant building in a prominent downtown location. City wouldn't have to worry about maintenance, heating, security for that building. They could just kind of hand it off to its future user. So that's been a priority for us. The way we've been trying to advance that is to sort of clear some of the hurdles to redevelopment. So one thing we recommended is for the city to pursue a phase one environmental assessment, just so there's one less thing for a future developer to take on. We also met with the Historical Society. The city, because it's a city-owned building on the state and National Register of Historic Places, it has some special stipulations, and the Wisconsin Historical Society actually has to review that sale. And so we met with them to understand what steps would be needed. A prospective developer that had been in touch with the city in the past had reached out about that project kind of on their own. And so we met with them to discuss their interest. And from there, since then we've drafted a project schedule to identify what steps need to take place in order for the city to recruit a new user for that building. I'll talk about this shortly, but our recommendation is for the city to undertake a request for qualifications or RFQ process. And that's a process in which you would seek qualifications from different development teams and determine if you can find someone you want to work with who could take on that building for its future use. Okay. With that, I'd like to turn to phase two. As you may know, our contract is in two phases, in part to show progress on our part and to ensure that the city wants to continue working with us. And I really think we're at a critical moment right now with the police station likely to relocate, with Weinbrenner also looking to relocate. We've got two sites that really need some thinking about what their future will look like. The Weinbrenner one, of course, being a little bit more urgent, with police station being quite a bit more long-term. And this is kind of a moment where we have a sense of what the future is going to look like. And it's good to take proactive action to start to shape that. So phase two, just over 12 months, and I'd love to provide an overview of what we think we're going to be doing going forward, recognizing this is subject to change as different opportunities arise. So in phase two, we'll continue to provide the same level of project management. We'll continue to provide updates to the CDA. As development is proposed within the West 2nd Street District, will involve the CDA in that review. Per state statute, the CDA is tasked with leading redevelopment activities, and so part of their role is to ensure that new development in the district is consistent with the recommendations of the redevelopment plan. Also continue to provide updates to property owners and stakeholders and coordinate with Main Street Marshfield on that. And then as needed, we'll follow up with specific property owners. So now that the lines of communication are open, if we need to reach out to somebody about something, we feel comfortable being able to do that pretty easily. We're also going to be looking at continuing to advance redevelopment sites. So one thing we can do is look at potential options for the police department sites. Again, a long-term objective, but to start thinking about what that might look like. Our current redevelopment plan as adopted did not assume there'd be any change at that site. So a little more planning thinking needs to occur there. We'll keep working on Site 1 or the Voltus building and look for opportunities to advance reuse and redevelopment in that location. We'll continue to advise on tips, potential grants and funding sources, other tools the city can use to support redevelopment. And then also looking at the city garage site, if there's any buffering or actions the city can take to encourage new development adjacent to that garage site that would mitigate, the buffering would mitigate any adverse impacts of the garage site. I think we're excited about the prospect of diving into potential reuse of the Weinbrenner building. So I mentioned we put together a detailed schedule. We're still working on that with the PMT about what that will look like. But I wanted to share some of the key steps in that process because I do think it's a long process and I think the council is going to be interested in what is involved. A key first step is doing due diligence and removing barriers to reuse. So I mentioned we talked about environmental assessment and coordinating with the Historical Society. So things like that can be cleared before we even start talking to potential new developers. From there, we can start a RFQ process potentially. There are quite a few steps in that process. A few are provided below on the slide, but that RFQ would need to be approved by the city, PDA and city. The city would issue the RFQ. Qualifications would be submitted, those would be reviewed, and then ultimately would lead to a selection of a preferred developer. From there, we would go through developer negotiations, which can be kind of a long process to make sure everybody gets what they need to out of the arrangement. And if we get to the point where a development agreement is signed, there'd be some pre-construction activities followed by ultimately construction. And again, the goal would be when Weinbrenner exits that building, they could hand off the keys to the city and the city could turn around and hand them off to the new user with almost no gap in between. Lastly, our contract is written to be quite broad. It allows the city to direct us to do a wide range of things as may be needed. And so just wanted to highlight a few of those things. So we, as the project requires it, we can do concept planning. We can assist with evaluating proposed developments and negotiating with developers. We can advise on land acquisition. We can advise on funding sources and TIF. We can assist with business and development recruitment and help with public improvement coordination and brownfield assistance, again, as needed and as directed by the city. And with that, I'll pause and turn it back to Steve.
Thanks a lot, Jackie. Appreciate the report on what's been done and looking ahead to what could be done. Mayor, you can maybe see if there's any questions from the council.
Any questions from the council for Jackie? Jackie, thank you for that great report. Very excited. District 6, Alderman Stauber.
Thank you, Mayor. One question came to mind in phase 1 and possibly phase 2. You talked about possible constraints due to historical significance of the building. And maybe my question also ties to environmental constraints. Converting a factory like that that's been in existence for a long time into, let's say, residential or multifamily, I'm not sure. But what kinds of constraints would you run into? And could you rate those? For example, converting it to an apartment building. I guess I want to know what kind of a hurdle we might have to work through.
Sure. So we haven't done a detailed structure evaluation. We have had folks look in there. We have had our architect walk through the building. But typical things that you might see in a project like this would be asbestos and lead-based paint. And so that's definitely something we would expect to have to remediate if that was found. Building was built in the 30s, so I would expect we would find a little bit of that in the building. The environmental phase 1 could also turn up other things related to manufacturing process. So far, the folks we've spoken to at the Historical Society and others didn't raise any significant red flags about the type about activities occurring in a shoe factory, but the environmental assessment would identify anything that might have occurred from that. In terms of the historical nature of the building, the Historical Society usually has verbalized to us that they really want to work with people on getting buildings reused. And so I think we have to go through the process with them and communicate with them, but I'm not overly concerned that they're going to be a barrier to the building being reused. I think their perspective is that they're excited to see a new user be part of this. One thing to consider is that if the new developer wishes to use historic preservation tax credit, they will need to follow certain historic preservation guidelines, which frankly, I think is a great thing because it means that the historic character of the building can be preserved.
Okay, thank you.
District 2 Alderman Derek Werman.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Love all the work that was put into this. I had two quick questions. One would be, you mentioned that you're monitoring our discussions with, the police station and the city garage and possible moves on that. So one of the things we talked about is the possible reuse of those buildings as well. And I think that was a little bit of a debated topic amongst the council is like, how do we reuse those buildings or what can we do with them? Was somebody interested? So do you see potential for that there? And then my follow-up question to that would kind of be, what is your adaptability and agility look like, as this council goes through changes every 2 years, or every year, the odd districts get voted on and then the other year the even districts do. So there's potential to change and there's potential always for these types of votes to go different ways or projects to be brought back. So I kind of wanted to tack on, the second question to see, like, hypothetically, that police building, we pull that back in 6 months, what does that look like for your group? And then, like I said, those two buildings, just what those marketability is for those.
Sure. So I'll respond about the police station building first. I have not been inside that building. At a glance, it seems like it will be challenging to reuse just because there's not a lot of windows. It's pretty solid structure. But I really haven't looked at it closely. So I think it would be important for us to at least look at that to see if there are other potential reuses for the building. But I think just at a glance, it seems like there would be some challenges given that it is purpose-built for a police station, and it may be challenging to find another user that is looking for the same qualities. What was the second building that you had asked about?
It was a city garage, just because we coupled, there's the Baltus building across the street that has police vehicles in it and things like that. So there's just a lot in that district that if we relocated things, obviously there's multiple buildings that we could potentially do something with. And some of them, like that Baltus building, I walked that for sure when we looked at police station options, and it's old and beat up. I don't know that there's a lot of potential for reuse there, but the plot itself obviously is in a pretty good location. So.
Yes, and I feel that that's a great first project. Potentially removing that building and fitting some new development on there, something that kind of brings vitality to the street and essentially outdoor dining or even residential in the back. I think that site has a lot of opportunity. In terms of kind of the long-term nature of redevelopment, that's just kind of part of the deal for us. These redevelopment projects can take years, maybe decades, depending on, what the different factors are. I think an important part, responsibility of us is to continue to update the council on what we're working on, share successes. Having some initial successes up front definitely helps because it keeps people focused on plan implementation. I think it's incumbent on us to just really be in communication and sharing what we are up to so that people keep their eye on the ball about the importance of this area. But I would say in every project we work on, things change over the course of the years. Different, building becomes available, then it's not available. Maybe the council changes their mind about something. That definitely is part of the journey. And so we do our best to respond to that.
Go ahead, Steve.
So thank you so much. And just to follow up, that's exactly why I asked, was simply because I do think we've had a lot of discussions lately about, what is the city's goal? Are we looking at economic development? Are we looking at this? Are we looking at that? Like, what are we trying to prioritize as a city, as a council? And so I don't know how those things adapt and change this. And then, like I said, come April and whatnot, we'll have potential voted members in. So there's always possible for changes down the line. And I like to hear that we have that ability to adapt and be agile with it. Thank you for the reassurance.
Jackie, this is Steve. I realize that I talk to you all the time, but I just want to kind of clarify a point that Councilmember Werman was asking about. And correct me if I'm wrong, but your preference with Vanderwall would be to see the Public Works garage removed and relocated and make that site available for redevelopment. But based upon the fact that the police station seems to be in front of it in a priority, that's why you were talking about mitigating the impact of that property on the surrounding area, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions from other council members? Jackie, thank you again for your report and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Item P, presentation of candidates for election to a 7-year term on the Marshfield Utilities Commission presented by myself. We have 2 candidates and you have them in your packets, Gabrielle Falke and Kathy Latzer. Gabrielle is here this evening and she will come to the podium and present why she would like to be on the commission. And if you'd like to ask her a few questions, then in 2 weeks, Kathy will be here. She is on vacation now. So in 2 weeks, she'll come and do the same thing as what Gabrielle is doing. Gabrielle?
Hi, I'm Gabrielle Falke. I live at 301 Wisconsin Avenue. I live right here in town. I am submitting myself for consideration on the Utilities Commission because I served for 3 years on the Economic Development Board, and I had a really great experience there. Some things came up in my life personally. I had to change priorities, and that's why I left the position at that time. So one of the utility members brought up this position to me as an opportunity. I'm looking to get back into participating in this process. I think it's very important as a citizen of this community to be a part of this process. I come with a background of 11 years in project management. I've managed large projects up to $150 million. I've managed the employees, I've managed the finances, I've managed all the components of it. In serving on the Economic Development Board, I have participated in city government procedures, so I'm familiar with that and the responsibilities and the requirements of those positions. I own a small business here in town, actually 2 small businesses, but the one that most people know is the food truck that I own with my business partner. So I have experience, from the business side of things and understanding what small businesses and even tiny businesses like mine are looking for from support for the company or from the community. I have attended training on different types of utilities like solar, wind energy. I'm very interested in the spectrum of understanding, how the city works and how the electric grid works and all that stuff. So I understand that there's a learning curve there, but I learned very quickly, so I'm confident that I'll be able to pick that up. Just looking to see. I'm a consumer of the utility service, so I think it's important, again, to participate in the community and be a part of something like this. So I appreciate your consideration of me for that position.
Thank you. Any questions for Gabrielle? Seeing none, Gabrielle, thank you for stepping up. Oh, here we go. Just as the bell. Well, you're lucky, Gabrielle. Would you stay up? Alderman Stubber has a question.
Not for Gabrielle.
He always does this to me.
I do thank you for putting your name forward. Thank you. I don't have any questions specifically for you. I have something else, kind of a tangent to this. So it's not relevant, but so we have 2 candidates, and it dawned on me that one of the candidates being a former employee, it kind of rekindled a conversation that or a mention that was made on another commission where you had a retired city employee serving on the governing body of that commission or that governing body of that organization, specifically as Fire and Police Commission. And it got me thinking that it might not be in our best interest to allow former employees to serve on the governing body that, I'll just say the organization or department from which they came, which they retired. And 2 things come to mind, and this is not a reflection on the current applicants at all, but We could be creating a situation where an employee was maybe not satisfied with their work environment and maybe they're seeking retribution. And therefore, if we put a retired employer or disgruntled employee on a commission, all of a sudden they're the boss of, theoretically of their former employer. And also cronyism. And again, it's not a reflection on any of the candidates, but looking down the road, we may be opening ourselves or future councils up for these types of negative situations. Again, I'm very appreciative that we have 2 candidates for the Utility Commission, but I do think that in the grander scheme of things, we should take a look at the municipal code and consider introducing language such as a former employee of an organization shall not serve on the governing body of that organization. And this could include the Fire and Police Commission, the Utility Commission, the Plan Commission, and UW Wood County Commission. Again, the bottom line is, you've got a potential for a former employee to be the governing body, and it just strikes me as an odd arrangement. So I'm not sure what the best procedure would be, but I feel rather strongly that we should introduce that language into the municipal code.
Thank you, Russ. And there's no action taken this evening. Again, in 2 weeks, Kathy will be here and she will present her reasons why, and then we will vote. You as a governing body will vote. I am not allowed to, because this is for the council only. And Gabrielle, thank you for coming. And again, thank you for stepping up. We certainly appreciate it. Item Q, second reading of ordinance number 1519, annexing property at 111250 West McMillan Street to the city of Marshall and establishing SR2 single-family residential as a zoning clarification presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, these next 2 items are second readings of items that came from the Plan Commission. And as generally is the case, I read a little bit more of a short summary, the second reading than the first, just because you've heard the full spiel before, if you will. And this one is fairly simple as it is anyway. The request is for annexation on a property at the northwest corner of St. Joe's and West McMillan Street. And it's roughly 2 acres in size. The property is currently used as a single-family residence. The applicant is not planning to change that use anytime soon. Looking at the current zoning, it did seem like the applicant's request for SR2 single-family residential made sense. That was the request made, or the recommendation made, by Bryce Hembrook, our contract planner, to the Plan Commission, as all seemed to be in order with the request and is moving forward with the state and notification to the town of McMillan as well. So ultimately, the Plan Commission did vote to recommend approval of the annexation, and also, this was after a public hearing was held, and also they did recommend that the initial zoning be set at SR2 single-family residential. So staff would recommend approval of ordinance 1519, approving the rezoning request and setting that initial zoning at SR2.
I have a motion on the floor by Alderman Tompkins, second by Alderman Varsho. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman,
Yes.
Mrs. Spiros,
Yes.
Mr. Rigel.
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you. We are over. We are not going to be speaking about item R, as it's going to come back. Item S, second reading of ordinance number 1521, amending sections 18-31 MR-12, 18-32 MR-24, 18-34 NMU, 18-35 CMU, 18-36 UMU, and 18-37 DMU to add clarification for how lot width, lot area, and building coverage of lots are determined for townhouses with individual lots to various zoning districts, presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. And I do apologize on the last item. I inadvertently said the corner of West McMillan and St. Joe's. I meant Oak is a cross street, but I think you all knew where I meant, and the map was in the packet as well, so my apology. This is more of a housekeeping administrative item, for lack of a better term. The city adopted a new zoning code back in 2013, created a townhouse definition, and set up a number of minimum lot width, minimum lot area, building coverage, those type of requirements as part of that code amendment, that code update. However, it was not clear as to whether these items occurred, or how to be calculating these particular items, I should say. In August of 2023, the zoning code was updated to include language that did specify how to calculate those various items. And, but it was more specific to individual townhouse lots. And as a result, it provided that clarification, but staff noticed that there was still confusion because people looking for those requirements under the specific zoning district would not find it. So anyway, staff is proposing to amend some of the zoning district density, intensity, bulk regulation tables to provide a note, simply a note to refer people to the correct townhouse section for those regulations. What we're looking at is putting an asterisk by all the sections that the mayor was reading to clarify where they can find the proper information in every one of those sections for townhouse regulations. So with that in mind, the Plan Commission did hold a public hearing. They recommended approval. The first reading has been held. And tonight, staff is recommending approval of ordinance 1521.
We have a motion by Alderman Giles, second by Alderman Tompkins. Is there any discussion from the council? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman,
Yes.
Mrs. Spiros, Mrs. Spiros,
Yes.
Mr. Rigel,
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you. Item T, first reading of ordinance number 1522, prohibiting large-scale commercial animal breeding, introduced by Brian Giles, council member, district number 7.
Thank you, Mayor. So earlier this year, a group in Marshfield had expressed some concerns about a residence that they felt might be in violation of some ordinances involving dogs. At the time, dog breeding and puppy mills were mentioned. After checking, there were no violations at this residence, but it did get me thinking about what we as a municipality can do to put a dent in puppy mills. While researching, I found some pretty astonishing facts, including the fact that 99% of dogs sold at pet stores are actually obtained from puppy mills. Also, while doing research, I came across multiple groups who are working with both states and cities on ordinances like the one I have introduced tonight. One of those groups is Bailing Out Benji, and they have worked with multiple organizations, multiple cities, including quite a few in Wisconsin, one being Wausau. So tonight I have actually brought Peggy Race from Bailing Out Benji to do a short presentation to share some data and some background and to answer any questions the council may have. So I'd like to introduce Peggy Race.
Thank you and good evening. I am going to try and share some slides here. All right, are you able to see that?
Yes.
We are.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, so my name is Peggy Race, and I am a Wisconsin state lead for Bailing Out Benji. And I'd like to thank Brian for inviting me here tonight to give some background on why we see this ordinance as being important. So Bailing Out Benji, just to give you some background on who we are, we're a nonprofit organization dedicated to ending puppy mill cruelty through research, education, and advocacy. And we do this by collecting thousands of certificates of veterinary inspection records, also called CVIs, or you may have heard of them as health certificates. And these records are obtained directly from the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture. And so this is important because commercially bred puppies are regulated and cannot be transported across Wisconsin state lines without a CVI. And the CVIs provide documentation on where the puppies come from and where they are going. And so this is how, like, Bailing Out Benji can identify where Wisconsin pet stores are getting their puppies. So our research shows that in 2022, Wisconsin pet stores obtained over 2,000 puppies from 8 different states, and those would be these states in the green. And that does not include puppies that came from Wisconsin breeders. On the other map to the right, we have states that don't require breeders to be licensed in their state in order to breed. And so Arkansas is one of those states that transports puppies puppies into Wisconsin and doesn't require licensing. So what is a puppy mill? So you may already know that a puppy mill is an inhumane commercial breeding facility that treats dogs as products. These puppy mills cut corners in veterinary care, quality of food, and genetic testing, while forcing dogs to live in high confinement situations with little to no human interaction. And these minimal survival standards of care are ideal breeding grounds for health and behavioral issues that are often place an emotional and financial burden on the consumer. And so responsible breeders do not sell to pet stores. You know, they kind of want to screen who is buying their puppies. They do the genetic testing. They want you to come to their property and see the parents of the dogs. And they often will breed have one or two breeding dogs on their property compared to a puppy mill who has a large quantity of adult dogs. So these commercially licensed facilities are governed by the Animal Welfare Act and regulated by the USDA. And under the Animal Welfare Act, dogs are legally allowed to spend their entire lives in stacked cages with wire flooring, which provide no more than 6 inches of space on all sides of their body. And additionally, there are no grooming requirements, and dogs can be bred at every cycle. But this is not only an issue of animal welfare, it is also a consumer protection issue. So the pet store model speaks to the impulse buyer, and unfortunately, consumers are often unaware these puppies are like born in unsanitary conditions, taken from their mothers at a very young age, placed on semi-trucks with other potentially sick puppies, and then shipped hundreds of miles to the pet store. And this transportation process allows problematic breeders to sell their puppies through brokers to hide where the puppies are actually coming from. In fact, some of the illnesses common to pet store puppies include zoonotic disease, which poses a risk to consumers and young pet store employees who can contract the disease just from holding a sick puppy. And this made headlines a few years ago when over 100 Americans contracted an antibiotic-resistant infection from pet store puppies that placed dozens of people in the hospital. And the outbreak was such a serious public health concern that the CDC issued an outbreak advisories and opened an official investigation. Besides the puppy sourcing issues, pet stores also offer financing for all of their puppies. Countless public records and undercover investigations have shown Petland selling sick puppies to unknowing consumers and charging interest rates as high as 188%. And these predatory lending schemes can result in consumers paying 2 to 3 times the original cost of their puppy. And as we know, Marshfield has no puppy selling pet store at this time. So this ordinance will not impact any existing businesses in the city. However, it also will not discourage pet-related businesses operating under a humane model from choosing Marshfield as their new home. It's well established that no pet store needs to sell puppies to make a profit. The vast majority of pet stores in Wisconsin do not sell puppies and kittens, but rather profit from products and services. So the American Pet Products Association reports that the pet business is booming, with Americans spending $147 billion on their pets in 2023. And according to Pet Business Magazine, out of the top 30 pet store retailers in North America, only one sells puppies. And yet many of these stores achieved impressive growth despite the ongoing pandemic, turbulent economy, supply chain disruptions, and increasing competition. So should this ordinance pass, Marshfield will remain open to the vast majority of pet industry businesses who adhere to a supplies and services model. And this ordinance will also show our state legislators that there is local support for passing a similar law at the state level. So puppy selling pet stores who include deception, disease, and predatory lending practices as part of their business model are not what this city is about. It's important for the city of Marshfield to protect its residents and the pets we love. The ordinance will do just that while also encouraging responsible pet acquisition, as residents will still be able to find new pets directly from responsible breeders, shelters, or rescues in the area. The city of Marshfield would be in good company as 14 other localities in Wisconsin have also passed this ordinance. This is in addition to more than 475 localities across the nation, including 8 states, California, Maryland, Maine, Washington, Illinois, New York, Oregon, and Vermont have all passed similar ordinances. So passing this ordinance in Marshfield will not only send a message that the community doesn't support this cruel industry, but it will also protect its residents from disease, predatory lending, and the financial and emotional hardships that come with purchasing a pet store puppy. So I'd like to once again say thank you for taking the time tonight to consider this ordinance, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Peggy. Alderman Werman?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, and I believe that I'm probably answering my own question, but as I read the ordinance, I just want to verify, this sounds like it's more of a crackdown, if you will, on the actual selling of animals like that. But like when it comes to the adoption of animals like that, like there will be animal shelters where, you know, dogs that were bred elsewhere like that, like you were mentioning the other states and brought here, you could still adopt a dog in that situation, correct?
Correct. And pet stores can actually work with shelters or rescues and hold adoption events at their store. They just can't keep them at the store to sell them. So the pet store is not going to profit from it. You know, if the shelter came in or the rescue have their event at the pet store, it's still the rescue who's going to, you know, take the adoption fee.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, and I did see that line in there as well, that the dogs could not be kept overnight at the pet stores. So and that's kind of where I thought it was going. I just wanted to verify for my own sanity. So thank you.
Yep.
Alderman O'Reilly?
Thank you. Yeah, I do support a lot of what this does. I do have some concerns on, I guess, what definitions may apply to some of the verbiage that's used in here. Commercially, I have my definition. I'm not sure. I guess I would ask for Attorney Wolfgram, have you reviewed this at all? Or I'm a little concerned about some of the verbiage because I know I'm not thinking of, you know, a typical pet store, quite clear, would not be able to do that, and I agree with that. But are there other elements of the dog world, per se, that maybe you have hunting dogs that if someone sold X amount a year, would they be considered commercially selling them? Or I guess I just want to make sure that we don't have any implications that reach further than what we're trying to do here too, because as a whole, it's a great thing, and puppy bills do need to be stopped. So
if you read the ordinance, I mean, this is basically focused on pet store sales. It's really what's being eliminated, and it's doing that based off the definition of pet store. So that's what I would tell you to look at. In terms of some specific scenario, I didn't look at it that way. I didn't draft this. It came to me in a format, and then I looked it over and made changes that I thought were appropriate. And, you know, in terms of how far it goes, I think you got to look at that definition and sort of assess that. I can't think of one offhand. I think that there are differing versions of this. And I'm being careful here because this is not, you know, this isn't legislation I'm proposing. And my job here is to look at it from a legal point of view and make sure that it's not something that's in some way unlawful. But how far or what you want to do is up to this body, one way or the other.
could I follow up, please? I was wondering if our presenter could let us know, has there been any objectionable type, not necessarily objectionable, but any legal standings that you've run into with this in any of the other areas where it's been approved?
So I actually don't think I can speak to that. I know this language is drafted by the Humane Society of the United States, and I know Brian's had contact with them, so I mean, they might be a better resource for that
Okay, thank you.
to answer the question.
Any other questions? Alderman Stalbert?
I'm just trying to think through the scenarios that maybe we don't see in the ordinance. And one scenario might be, as Alderman O'Reilly stated, maybe you've got a private home that is, breeding dogs. And I think if that were to occur, we'd have other ordinances that would probably address that. So the ordinance is written for bricks and mortar pet stores. But if there were someone that were breeding dogs, then I think it would be, a conditional use violation or some other violation of the home ordinance. Yeah.
So just to address that, it sounds like you're talking about two different things. I understood Mike's question to sort of be, is there something within this that might stop someone who is going to sell dogs, hunting dogs, that might have a litter of hunting dogs and they're going to sell it? So like what you're concerned about is some other mechanism that would stop someone from doing that. I don't know whether you intend to do that or not. That's not really my business, but my view of this is that this is dependent on that definition of pet store. Okay, so, if you look at that specific definition and you read through that, it would normally not be dealing with somebody that's got their own animal that's being bred. Whether we have other ordinances that address that, we have a restriction under the code, and I'm just kind of speaking off the top of my head, that limits the number of dogs that you can own at any one time. I've not seen that applied in this situation where all of a sudden you have a litter of pups because one day you have one and the next day you got 9, right? I mean, I've never seen that prosecuted. I don't think they would intend to prosecute that. And so there would be sort of an exemption under those rules to allow that to happen. My understanding in terms of the intent of this ordinance would be that you're not intending to stop someone from having a litter of pups and just, disseminating those pups on a private basis. It's this commercial sale situation that they're looking at.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Peggy. Thank you very much. And in 2 weeks, we will vote. Item U, request to approve resolution number 2024-36, special assessments for 2024 asphalt paving project. Alley between Central Avenue and Maple Avenue from 12th to 14th Street, presented by Josh Moritz, City Engineer.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening. At the beginning of tonight's meeting, there was a public hearing related to this alley. This is a project that was added to our asphalt paving program kind of mid-season. And this resolution just furthers the special assessment process for the project. The project being number 312326M. There's an alley lying between Central Avenue and Maple Avenue running from 12th Street to 14th Street. I just recommend to approve this resolution.
We have a motion by Alderman Stauber, second by Alderman Varsho. Any questions, comments from the council? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Warman?
Yes.
Mrs. Spiros? Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item V, request to approve resolution number 2024-38, dedication of the right-of-way for Bradford Court, presented by Tom Turchi, Director of Public Works.
All right, this is part of that CSM that was discussed 2 weeks ago, and this is for the T-type turnaround at the intersection of Bradford Court and Adams Avenue. So I'd recommend approval of a resolution 2024-38.
We have a motion by Alderman Varsho, second by Alderman Giles. Any questions from the council? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Warman?
Yes.
Mrs. Spiros?
Aye.
Mr. Rigel?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item W, request to approve resolution number 2024-39, dedication of the right-of-way of Yellowstone Drive, presented by Tom Turchi, Director of Public Works.
All right, with this dedication, this will actually widen the right-of-way on Yellowstone Drive to include the trail that was constructed along the south side of the roadway. We have been working with the developer to create a possible lot on the south side of that industrial park. So this resolution, basically 2024-39, approves the additional right-of-way.
We have a motion, Alderman Tompkins, second Alderman Giles. Any discussion from the council? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman,
Aye.
Mrs. Spiros,
Yes.
Mr. Rigel,
Aye.
That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item H, update on development of 2025 city budget presented by Jennifer Solinsky, Finance Director, and Steve Bark, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. We're going to do a tag team on this. I'm going to start by giving an overview of the 2025 budget development process that we've been working on, and then I'll turn it over to Jennifer, and she'll go a little bit more in depth on some of the issues. Just kind of talking process for a minute. We began back in June with the initial meeting that we had with the key people involved in budget development from the various departments. The Finance Department put out a note that we were looking at a 2% cap. Our goal is to keep all departments within 2% increase in expenditures. We realize that might be difficult for some departments, and we've had conversations with some of them who've had reasons why they needed to exceed that. But that was a great starting point for us in this process. The department requests were crafted and sent to us by the end of July, as they always are. And then in August, I began reviewing them, as did Finance Department staff, Jennifer Solinsky, Jordan Munger, as we began to look at what we had there and where the opportunities might lie and how the lay of the land looked. And then subsequently, we began meeting later in the month with, the three of us met with department heads and division heads to go through their budgets in depth and find out where, why some of the expenditures were maybe being increased or why some new items were being included. Asked a lot of questions. Some of those meetings went on for an hour and a half per department, but we got some good information, found some opportunities for potential expense cuts. Just recently, in fact, today, actually, I met with Jennifer and Jordan to take a look at where we're at with some of the opportunities that we've identified. We are looking at a current gap of $960,000, give or take. So it's fairly daunting yet, not surprising, not unheard of for this point in the process. As I mentioned, we have been evaluating and continue to evaluate some opportunities for expense cuts and possible revenue increases. Nothing specific to report right now, but we'll be following up with department and division heads on some of these and seeing what we can do as we whittle down that gap toward balancing the budget. One item that I'd like to mention tonight, one item for revenue increase that we proposed in the past but haven't gotten to, and there have been some concerns that have been raised along the way that we've discussed, is creating a direct charge for street lighting. Currently, the city has a street lighting budget of roughly $250,000, and but we, as part of our regular general fund, it would continue to be part of the general fund, but we've talked about, and we've talked with this body about in the past, the idea of a direct charge to customers based upon, and it would be across the board, whether you're a taxpayer or a nonprofit or whatever, paying based upon a certain formula. And we've looked at what other cities have used, charging so much for residential, so much for commercial use, paying your share of the overall citywide street lighting cost. What that would do, like I said, we would continue to have the expense that we always have, but we'd have offsetting revenue coming into the picture to help us covering those costs. So I guess I'd like some discussion in this when we're done with the presentation as to whether or not council is interested in pursuing that. If they are, we really need to take that on fairly quickly if we're going to try and implement that for 2025. So right now, I'd like to turn it back to Jennifer. She'll take a look at more detail, especially the revenue side of the equation. Jennifer?
Good evening. I'm going to focus a little bit more on the revenue because this is the time of the year where we're starting to get our notices from the state, and we begin to become a little bit more sure of where our revenues are going to land for the year. Earlier this week, the state issued our property tax levy worksheet. And what I'd like to do is kind of walk through where we were last year to where I'm projecting we'll land for this year. So last year, we were able to levy $10,887,000. Now, as part of the normal process, we get a modifier increase for our net new construction. For this year, we topped over 1%, which we hadn't done for a couple of years. So at 1.015%, we will increase our levy by about $113,000. Also new for this year is we'll see some gain for the closure of TID 5. Once a TID closes, the state has a formula where you get a certain percentage of your overall increment returned to you in a permanent levy boost. For TID 5, this will result in $65,637,000 of additional levy. Also in 2023, the state passed Act 12, and part of Act 12 was the repeal of personal property. Each year that the assessment was included in tax bills, that's being removed. Our share of personal property tax in the levy was $328,000, so that's coming off. You'll see an equal boost later in our state aids. But it comes off the levy each year now. That results in a levy of $10,737,882, which is about $149,000 less than last year. What will not be factored into the worksheet this year that the state provides is the estimate for our clinic settlement and the repeal of certain taxes. At this point, I'm still estimating that to be about $250,000, but we won't know that amount for certain until the end of October, when all of the taxing jurisdictions submit their levies to the city and we calculate a consolidated tax rate. I am also expecting just under $8,200 for an add back of previously rescinded property taxes. So our projected property tax revenue is going to be just shy of $10.5 million, which is a decrease of about $391,000 from last year. Now we get into, that's our primary source of revenue. The second primary source of revenue is our state aids. Last year we received $8,078,000. This year we'll see an increase in our county and municipal aid, which is also known as our shared revenue, of $125,560. You'll see a positive adjustment in our personal property tax, which equally offset the negative in the tax levy of $328,000. There is also personal property tax will get a credit from TID 5. Since that closed, that'll come back to the general fund. That's worth just under $53,000. So our projected state aid is around $8,585,000, which is an increase of $506,000 from the prior year. So when we look at our two primary sources of revenue, being property taxes and state aids, we will see an increase in the general fund of about $115,000, which is then used to fund all of the increases across our departments. That is not a hefty amount of increase that we'll see from those two sources, and that is where we're looking at that budget shortfall that Steve mentioned earlier and trying to now, given this known increase in revenue, what to do about the projected or submitted expenditures from departments. There are a couple of items that are yet to be updated in our budget model. The first being the pilot, and again, we won't know that until late October when everybody submits their levy and I calculate a new rate. Depending on where we land with the rate and our equalized percentage, we could be in the same neighborhood as 2024 or slightly less, given depending on where our equalized value lands. Special assessments still need to be updated, and that'll occur later this month. We're still in the allowable collection period of new special assessments, and then whatever doesn't get paid, 1 year of that will go on the next tax roll. So we'll be able to calculate that amount later this month. And then, of course, our transportation aids come to us in early October. So just wanted to give you an overview of where we're projected to fall in terms of revenue and sort of a short list of to-dos yet to get done. And with that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Alderman Tompkins?
Thank you for this report. So with the gap of about 260,000, would the pilot take away from that amount? Or we're assuming the same level of pilots, so same gap?
There's a few factors that go into the calculation of the pilot. So the net assets that the utility has increased, which would increase our pilot. The things that could decrease it are any changes in the levies from the school district or the technical college. Our levy is probably going to be similar to last year, given the ups and downs that we have. And the other factor that that kind of jumps around and can impact the pilot a lot is the school tax credit. So, and then the last factor is wherever we went through a reval. So we were at 100% last year. So whatever our calculated pilot turned out to be, we got. This year, if our value has decreased on an equalized basis, that pilot will also decrease. So all of the inputs and outputs, we could be somewhere close to where we were last year or slightly above or below.
Any other questions for Jennifer? Seeing none, thank you, Jennifer, for that enlightening report.
You're welcome.
Item Y, suggest items for future agenda. Alderman Stauber?
Just taking a half step back, Steve had asked about general interest in a fee for lighting. And I guess I would like to know how other communities handle the cost of lighting and maybe quantify that and how Marshfield would compare. And I'd also like to know about something that I learned about when we were doing interviews for the utility manager position. One of the candidates was pretty well versed in electric use, electric rates, and said something about we have the ability to offer lower rates during non-high demand periods of the day. And I didn't get into the inner workings of that. I know it's a possibility, but I would like to know, the feasibility of having such a two-rate system. And if it is feasible, then I might be open to the option of charging for lighting. But I think the users should see an offsetting decrease in their electricity bills. If, for example, they can wash their dishes at 2 a.m, set their dishwasher, or do, taking advantage of delays and things like that. But I do know it's available. It just never was proposed by the utility that I'm aware of.
I think it's okay. The second piece can have the utilities folks address. That's okay. As far as the first part, if it's okay with this body, I would, if there's interest, I would then bring it forward and take this as a request to put the streetlight direct charge issue on the next council agenda, rather than go to finance, budget, and personnel just to bring it straight here. We've talked about it before, and go through all that with this body and see if there's interest or not interest in pursuing that.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman O'Reilly? Oh, I'm sorry.
One other thing, unrelated. Was yours related to that, or? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I was just curious, when we went through the street lighting thing, didn't that pass through already?
Through this body?
Yeah.
There was an indication of support. We never got it to the point of an ordinance, and now we have different membership since then. So you make a good point. But we want to bring it back and see if there's support to delve in and go forward now.
Any other items of future agendas?
Yes.
Alderman Stauber?
Thank you, Mayor. So going back to item P, where we're talking about candidacies for commissions, I would like to see an edited municipal code for our consideration, specifically be section 2.95, 2.98, 2.99, and 2.102. This would cover commission assignments or appointments for Fire and Police Commission, Utility, Plan Commission, and UW Wood County Commission.
Got it.
Thank you.
Anything else to come before this body? And who would like to adjourn?
Ms. Spiros has something.
Alderman Spiros?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I just want to address the fact that Mr. Wagner resigned, and I know we have an election coming up in November, but I don't know, in the past, we've handled resignations in the middle of terms differently. So I think that conversation should be held at the next council meeting, as well as informing the public as to what their options would be if they would want to fill that seat.
Yeah, I discussed that earlier today with the city clerk, and we'll bring forward an agenda item on the 27th that outlines your options for your review and discussion.
Anything else? Who would like to adjourn the meeting? Alderman Spiros, second by Alderman Weigel. Please vote to adjourn the meeting.
Mr. Werman,
Yes.
Mrs. Spiros,
Yes.
Mr. Weigel.
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.